Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to the New Testament Bible Cal. This is live number 7. I am going to try to follow along with my phone so that I can read the comments instead of trying to read them off the computer, as I don't know that I will be able to read them. And I was on time, but silly me, I was talking and nobody was here. Huh, because I hadn't gone live. I forgot to hit the button. What can I say? It is Tuesday and it's been a week of a lot of. Hi, AJ. Welcome in. So glad to see you. I was thinking about you yesterday and wondering if okay, not I was wondering, but I was thinking about you yesterday and thinking that I should call and make sure that you were okay. Um, but you know how that goes. I didn't get around to it. I apologize for that, but I do want you to know that I was thinking about you anyway. There's a link in case you want to join me. And I was going to try to follow along on my phone, and I don't know why I seem to be unable to do that. I can't even find it on my phone. Of course, I guess I wouldn't get a notification now, would I? Because I don't subscribe to my own channel. Maybe I should, and then I would have one. I don't know. I, for some reason, can't find it. So, I don't know if this silencing the phone thing worked. Or not, if I can. Um, that scared me half to death. What are you doing, Speedy? So I'm at my daughter's in the house because it's cold outside. And here's her cat, Speedy. Hi, Speedy. I hear you. Yes, I do. And he loves me. I don't know why. I'm really not a cat person. I'm a dog person, but I have been thinking that maybe I should get a cat instead. Let's see. Hi, Tina. Welcome in. I'm trying a little bit different setup, so try to bear with me. I was going to try to watch the live on the phone so that I could comment there instead of leaning forward to try to comment it, but I can't even find my live, so what can I say? It's one of those days. It's actually been one of those weeks. Hold on. So how are you ladies doing? Yeah, I have an appointment at 8:30 tomorrow morning too. Um, uh, Getting ready to do my preps for my surgery, so I have lots of appointments booked. Just got back from an appointment tonight. Num 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 num. After you to get on the phone. I waited. I tried before like an idiot. I mean, I even started talking and I hadn't pressed the go live button. So, but that's just how it is. I did try before, but I did wait and try again after, and I still can't find it. So I don't know. I know it's not that late here. It's only 6. Thank you, Tina. No, it's on my knee. I'm getting a total knee replacement on April Fools. So what do you think about that? Hopefully they don't play an April Fool's trick on me. Okay, so let's get started, shall we? I apologize. I wrote this out to do last week and I forgot because we went from Matthew to Mark, and so I forgot. What the heck? Okay, am I still on? Did you guys see me in that blackout that I had? Okay, my whole computer went black, and I'm like, oh, I'm glad I didn't cuss or something, say something bad. No, I hardly ever cuss, but when you're trying to do a live and the screen goes black, it's like, what the heck? Really? What the heck? Yeah. Yeah, the whole screen went black, and then it popped onto my screensaver, and I'm like, what? Okay, so we're good. Anyway, back to what I was trying to say is that I welcome Martisa. Welcome. Okay, so I was gonna do like a little intro into Mark so that we could see who Mark is, because he wasn't an apostle or a disciple. So I looked it up anyway, the book of Mark. What it said was Mark was 12 years when Jesus was crucified. So he was just a young boy when Jesus was crucified. So what he writes is thought to be the understanding he received by listening to what Peter preached. Mark was a companion of Peter through much of his ministry. So I guess, he just listened and then wrote a book. So there you have it. There's your quick little intro. Okay, let's go to Mark chapter 3. So let's see. I wrote this, and I haven't really thought about it since I wrote it, but maybe I shouldn't have wrote it, but I'm going to share it anyway, because that's what this is, right? Truth, honesty, on the spur of the moment, what we got out of it. It said, Jesus heals on the Sabbath, which of course caused a lot of problems for the Pharisees, right? And my thought process was, sometimes I think Jesus did things against the rules, if you will, so to speak, against the rules, just to prove a point. because by him breaking the rules, their rules, then that caused for friction, which caused and gave him the opportunity to teach. So I don't think that it was like accidental, is what I'm saying. And then he asks the Pharisees in verse 4, which is lawful on the Sabbath, to do good or to do evil, to save life or to kill? I mean, that was great. That was just great. And I think, I want to say this is the first time that we see that the Bible said their silence angered Jesus. It's very seldom that Jesus got even upset about anything, yet my Bible said their silence angered him. Because they keep coming at him trying to cause problems and question him and want things from him, and yet they can't answer a return question, basically. But when asked about it, Jesus said that he followed his Father and not the humans, that they are following the traditions of. Exactly. That's exactly right, AJ. I cannot remember if that was in this chapter, but it is in the book of Mark. I think that he says it straight out, but he alludes to it all the time. So, yeah. And then he goes in the synagogue and he heals the shriveled hand. And that is when it says the Pharisees and Herodians plot how they might kill Jesus. It's hard for me to fathom. We have hatred in the world today, but it is hard for me to fathom how someone who, they had really, maybe it wasn't hatred, maybe it was just anger and frustration, and maybe they were threatened by his presence, and that's why they wanted to kill him. Okay, so I guess I wanted clarification on that for some reason. So the commentary that I read talks about this guy with the shriveled hand. Jesus told him to stretch it out, right? So I thought this was a really good example to us on how we have choice. So Jesus tells the man to stretch out his hand. The man's experience is that he can't stretch out his hand. He hasn't been able to stretch out his hand. So he had the choice at that moment to obey God, obey Jesus, or he could have argued how he couldn't, how many times he's tried, how many times do we argue with people who are trying to tell us to do something, whether it's by saying, well, we can't do it, well, we don't have time to do it, well, because we have to do this and this and this and this, and I tried on this day and this time, and I've tried 50 million times and it didn't work, so why is this time going to work? But the man didn't do any of those things. He just reached out his hand. It says, for a basic law, the moment you choose to will to obey the command of Christ, in that very moment, he will give you everything necessary for you to obey. Now, did we get that? Let me read that again. For a basic law, the moment you choose to obey the command of Christ, in that very moment, he will give you everything necessary for you to obey. Does that hit the nail on the head or what? So the Lord many times says to us things things that something us are impossible, that to us are impossible. As he faces that blighted area in our life, that thing that has been destroying us and keeping us from real victory, that attitude, that temper, that weakness of our flesh, that area of our failure, and that's the thing that Jesus wants to address himself to in our lives. So there you go. Jesus wants to help us in those areas. He kind of seeks out, and even in the scriptures, he seeks out those people who needed him, who had an issue, who had an unclean spirit in them. And that's where he goes. Those are the people that he's kind of drawn to minister to.
Really quick. It's already after midnight.
Okay, so then as we're reading, we see an impure spirit fall down before Jesus and cry out, "You are the Son of God." But he gave them strict orders to not tell others about him. Why did I write that down? I wrote that down because the impure spirit fell down before Jesus. Sure, he recognized him, but why didn't he flee from him? Right? Why did he fall down and cry out to him and basically sing his praises? And then we see that Jesus appoints his disciples at the end of the chapter. He says to them, "Truly I tell you, people can be forgiven all their sins and every slander they utter. But whoever blasphemes against the Holy Spirit will never be forgiven. They are guilty of an eternal sin." A.J. wrote, "I found it ironic that the impure spirit knew who Jesus was and recognized him over and over in his dealings with him. But yet the Pharisees never see that Jesus is the chosen." I know. Yeah. Well, the impure spirits are really threatened by him. They know who he is because he's a threat to them. He can cast them out from, the hosts that they're staying in, send them away. Yeah. The Pharisees were very hardened people. And then I was a little bit surprised at the end where they say that his mother and brothers are asking for him. And he states, "Whoever does God's will is my brother and sister and mother." I know that, I don't know because I wasn't there, but I have the impression that he did not get along very well with his brothers, whether that's because they didn't think that he was the chosen one or not. But I kind of sense that Mary did. So that, anyway, that was kind of surprising to me that he kind of didn't acknowledge them. I don't know. What do you think, AJ? What do you think, Tina? Anything else you guys would like to add about chapter 3? Tina, would you like to come and join me up here? Okay, I'll take that as nothing. Nobody has anything new to add. Hopefully I'm not having an issue with my computer. I found in the book of Mark, more so than the book of Matthew, it seemed that Jesus was in a hurry to make the impure spirits hush and remove them, so as to not draw crowds. I just listening. Oh. Yeah, I think the thing about it is that Jesus had to silence them because they knew who he was, and it wasn't time for the general population or the people really to know who he was yet. And he was trying to not let, so God had him on a timeline of when things and how things were supposed to happen. And he had to, that couldn't be pushed ahead, if that makes sense. So if the impure spirits started blabbing all about who he was, then he would be found out sooner, and it might have sped everything up, which wouldn't have given him the amount of time he had to minister and teach the things that he needed to teach. And he needed to teach. He needed to teach the people, but he also needed to teach the disciples, who then he sent out to carry on his work for him after he was going to be crucified. And he had to have time to do that. And of course, the impure spirits were there and upon him right away. Okay, chapter 4. Chapter 4 is where we first see Jesus start teaching in parables. The purpose of a parable is not to veil the truth, but to illustrate the truth. Many times when people become dull of hearing, where they will not receive just straight teaching, when you've lost their attention, the method by which attention can be drawn back again to the subject is by illustration or telling a story. And don't we see that in our everyday lives? That, if we have people in our lives who've not been saved and we bring it up regularly in the same manner, then they stop listening to us, right? So Jesus was always trying to be creative, teach them the lessons that he wanted them to learn, but present them to them in a story form that related to their everyday lives so that they could relate to the story and thereby learn the lesson. Let's see, AJ wrote, I wrote about his family before they said who it was that they wanted to have Jesus given to them. In order to take charge of him, that I wondered who it was in his family because I was sure it was not Mary or Joseph. Yeah, and it was Mary and his brothers. Yeah. So that was kind of surprising, I would say. And that was kind of surprising, I think. So in the time that Jesus was there, Mary did not show up until later, I have in my notes. Yeah, but no one else was his mother. No one else could be, they said his mother and, I don't know. And it could be the, version that we're reading, so I don't want to, we need to kind of be careful with that because, all the versions, and there are a lot of them, write things just a tad differently. I'm not saying, I wasn't arguing with you, AJ, and I wasn't saying that, that wasn't what your version, I was just clarifying that it could be the version. So in the time that Jesus was there, most of the people were crop people. They grew their food or whatever. They were farmers, let's put it that way. They talk about his family 2 times in mine. I know. So was I at the same time? What do you mean, were you at the same time? I don't know. I'll look at that. That was in verse 35 in my Bible. I wrote it, so I'll look. I don't have a writing thing right here, too. I'll fold the page so I'll remember. Okay, so the parable of the sower. Talking about different versions that you were not. Oh. So the farmers scattered their seeds, right? Some seeds grew and withered, some seeds never took root, and some seeds grew and produced crop for them. And so by giving the parable in this manner, they were able to understand what he was saying. In my commentary, it said, it referred to the 1, 2, 3, 4 types of seed analogies. As some people hear the word, Satan comes and takes it away for the ones that fall along the paths and the birds eat. Others, like rocky places, hear the word, immediately rejoice, but last a short time. When trouble or persecution come, they're gone. Others, like the seed in the thorns, hear it, but the worries of life, deceitfulness of wealth, and desires for other things come and choke the word, making it unfruitful. And then, of course, others hear, accept, and produce a crop. And so, at first, especially when I read the King James Version, I read the parables and I'm like, what is he talking about? Right? But it makes perfect sense that he's teaching them in a way that they can understand and learn from it. I'm talking about verse 20. They talk of his family there, and in verse 31, they say his mother and brothers have come for him. Yeah, I don't, let's see if I wrote something for verse 20. I did not write anything for verse 20. I skipped over 20. I don't know why, but I did. I love how Mark explains the parables of the sowers. It is so much easier to understand. Exactly, I agree. This was really, really easy for me to get it. I got it. I mean, like, I really got it. And how many of us know? I mean, I'm sure that we all know all of these different kinds of people. And a common thing, what I've noticed that keeps getting repeated, is Jesus said, if he has ears to hear, let him hear. But a little bit later on, we have to be careful about what we're hearing. So, okay, I know I am in my PJs, but I am going to come up with you. Okay, I gave the link. Did you see it? You want me to put it in again so it's easier? I don't know how to tag them yet and all that. So let me do it like this. Oh, I can't paste it. Hold on. Why is my... Hi, AJ.
I figured
How
it'd
are
be
you?
easier than me being so far behind you and you trying to read it. And
Oh,
I
so did you want to say something else about it?
no,
Oh,
I was fine for us to go on, and that's why I had written it.
okay.
Oh, I've got you on. That's why I'm doing it today. Let me turn this off.
Tina says, hello, AJ. Can you see the comments?
Yes.
Okay.
Hi, Tina.
Okay, so the lamp on the stand. It says whatever is hidden is meant to be disclosed. Whatever is concealed is meant to be brought out to the open. So the commentary that I read said, we are the ones who are the light of the world, right? So that means we represent the lamp. A light is meant to illuminate the darkness, not to be hidden. And I remember there have been times in my life that I'm like not out there about being a Christian. I'm like more subdued. And so I'm kind of thinking that's what this means. That we're not supposed to do that. A light that God has given to you is not something that you are to just hold for yourself. It is intended to bring light to others. I don't know. How about you guys? Do you always like let your light shine, or do you sometimes like dim it a little?
I've completely shut mine off at times.
And yet we're supposed to be, I know that I do more dimming when I'm around non-believers, right? But that's who we're supposed to be the light for. So I don't know. I had to kind of think about that one for a while.
I don't, when you say how you had said about yourself before, I guess when I think about myself when I was in high school, I was very shy. And even before, when I was younger, I used to be the one who held on to my dad's leg, very shy. I would sit in the corner, but yet I was in band, I was in choir, I was in drama. So I would always try to bring myself out of my shell, even though I wanted to stay there. So even then, there was something that was forcing me, to come out. So,
Yeah, to learn.
yeah. Not only to just learn like everybody else in school, but to be on the stage and, drama and swing choir and all of that. Because otherwise, I would have probably stayed in the corner all the time.
Yeah, I did. I stayed in the corner all the time. You never heard a peep out of me. I mean, like if someone said hi to me, then I would say hi back, but I wouldn't be the person to go out and say hi. I was not social when I was in school. When I was in college, I was much better, but not when I was in, you know, regular school. So then this is where it comes up in verse 24. It says, consider carefully what you hear. Right? So where were we? I didn't even write what verse that was, but it was not that far back. And he says, if you have ears to hear, let him hear. And here it says, consider carefully what you hear. When I try and talk about religion with my family, yeah, I agree, Tina. It's really difficult to do it with your family. My the standard here, right now I'm staying in my daughter's house with her 7 children. And the typical thing, if I say anything at all, is I'm going to hell and I'm glad of it. I'm glad about it. So, it's like, okay, she shut me down right there. She doesn't want to hear it. So all I can do is live the best that I can live so that she can see it. and not hear it, right? Because she can't hear. She doesn't want to have anything to do with hearing it. She's very negative. Yeah. Okay, so then the next thing, with the measure you use, it will be measured to you and even more. And that is more about if we're judging other people, right? If we're judging people, then we're going to be judged even more harshly than we're judging them. I don't want to do that. So I try not to judge. Of course, I am human, so I do occasionally, but you know. You want to add anything?
No.
Then the next thing we read about is the storm. Which we all know that story, right? I think that's kind of my commentary said this. When Jesus comes to them, he rebukes the wind, the sea, and then the men. And the question was, why the men? Because Jesus had said he had sent them to go to the other side. He had told us before, now be careful what you hear. They weren't careful what they heard. What they heard was the fear instead of what Jesus had told them, you're going to go to the other side, which meant that he was going to be with them and get them there, right? I don't know. That's what my commentary said. I'm not sure. I'm not exactly sure about that one, but
Do you want me to read you what mine says?
yeah.
Okay. Just leaving the crowd behind. Well, I'll just read from the beginning. That day, when evening came, he said to his disciples, "Let us go over to the other side." Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along just as he was in the boat. There were also other boats with him. A furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on the cushion. The disciples woke him and said to him, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, "Quiet, be still." Then the wind died down, and it was completely calm. He said to his disciples, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?"
Yeah.
They were terrified and asked each other, "Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him." And before that, they had talked about the mustard seed again, which I don't know if he had said that and I didn't hear it because I had problems with my sound going on again.
I did not.
Okay.
And I did not because I felt like I spent a significant amount of time on it last week when it came up.
Yeah, you did. I think I found so much comparing between the two. But how much they just talked about the mustard seed this once, and in Matthew he spent a really long time and he talked about it in two different places.
Yeah.
I just found that interesting.
Well, remember that Mark was just a kid, so Mark is not,
Right.
Mark is not learning this stuff from Jesus. He's telling us what he learned from Peter.
Right. I'm glad that you told us about that because I couldn't understand why, like, he uses different names in some places too.
Right. And I wrote a note about that. But Yeah, so, I'm sorry that I forgot to say that last week. I had the note there, and afterwards I started thinking about it. I thought, oh man, I forgot to do the like little intro thing. But
It's okay. I was watching you before this and I actually didn't get to see that part yet, so I have to go back and watch that part.
okay, so chapter 5. Oh, chapter 5 starts out with a demon possessed man, that even the chains won't hold him. He's so strong and so powerful that nobody can control this guy, not even chains. And what does he say to Jesus? What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? In God's name, don't torture me. Because that's what he does, right? He tortures people. So I guess he figured that Jesus was going to do that back to him.
I had a thought about the impure spirits. It wasn't on this one, it's later on. But it seems like when they're in people, they're trying to get them to kill themselves. Are they trying to get them to kill themselves to try and kill the spirits themselves? Or is that just what the devil wants them to do, is kill themselves?
Yeah, because I don't think that if the people killed themselves, that kills the impure spirit.
It just goes on to somebody else.
Yeah. Which leads right into my next
Oh,
comment.
this is the one that made me think that. Okay, sorry.
About the pigs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, they're begging Jesus to be sent out of the area or not to be sent out of the area. And then they ask to be sent into the pigs, which I don't know that I really got that analogy. Why? So Jesus gave him permission to go into the pigs. They came out of the men, went into the pigs. About 2,000 pigs were in that herd. Now, there weren't 2,000 spirits, but there were 2,000 pigs. And all of them rushed down the banks into the lake and drowned. So I needed to read the commentary about that because it just was a lot of questions. Why did they want out of the human? Why did they want into the pigs? And then why did the pigs run down the mountain? Well, probably they ran down the mountain because that was their order. And the commentary said it was against Mosaic law to keep pigs. It was a forbidden meat. Now I know that my first husband was Seventh-day Adventist, and that was a big thing. That was something that came up in our marriage all the time. That pork was unclean and we were not to eat it.
Mm-hmm.
Which, of course, I thought about that reading this because that was the law back then, right?
That
The
was one of
people
the
weren't,
things I thought about too.
yeah, people weren't supposed to keep pigs, raise pigs, or eat the meat. So did Jesus have them run down, let them go in the pigs and have them run down the hill and drown to get to kind of, I don't know.
I don't know. See, did you say that the spirits asked to be taken out of the man?
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh
that's not.
wait, let's see. Yeah, they beg not to be sent out of the area,
Yeah,
and then
but the man
ask
asked
to
to
be
have them
sent
taken
among
out.
the pigs.
The people asked him to take the spirit out of him because other people had tried, and there were so many. Isn't that this one?
Yeah, the man was possessed by so many
Right, and no
spirits.
one could bind him anymore. They had bound him and everything, for he had often been chained hand and foot. No one was strong enough to subdue him.
Mhm.
When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and fell on his knees in front of him. Yeah, I didn't take it as the spirits asked to be taken out of him. I took it as the man fell in front of him, wanting the spirits taken out of himself. That's how I took it. And the spirits said, we're basically, since you're taking me out and we know you're taking you out, can you please leave us in this area?
Mhm.
And then that was where I got the idea when they went into the pigs and then drowned themselves. I was like, well, are they trying to drown the pigs because they wanted, you know, not be, mean spirits, don't want to keep hurting people? I don't know. That was the first thought that came to my head.
Yeah,
Besides the thought of unclean food.
yeah, I
And I also found it telling that this was the first man that didn't go off running and telling everybody else when Jesus asked them not to, but he did tell them then to go and tell them about him, the people where he was from, to tell them about him, to tell them about the Lord and how he had mercy on you.
yeah, and but that, in my version it said that guy asked Jesus if he could go with him.
That's right. He did. He asked Jesus if he could go with him, and he told him no, to go home and tell them about me.
Right.
That's right. I'm sorry. I'm mixing up.
That's right. So really, the guy became a living testimony for Jesus.
Mm-hmm. And evidently people believed him. Well, because they knew how he was.
Right. And then Jesus raises from the dead the daughter of a synagogue leader. I found that kind of interesting.
That it was the daughter of a synagogue leader.
Yeah.
I did too.
I mean, the leader had to have had faith. I'm sure the leader had faith, or Jesus wouldn't have done it. But I still was kind of surprised that he did. Then, of course, he heals a woman bleeding for 12 years. Tells her, daughter, your faith has healed you. Because she's the one who believed that even if she touched his garment, that she would be healed. Yeah. Now I guess when people died in those days, they raised their voices and yelled and hollered and did whatever. And Jesus walks into the house, and by the time he gets there, the girl has already died, right? And of course, he knew that. And he tells everyone in the house that the girl is not dead, just sleeping. And then he goes to her and tells her to get up, and she does. And of course, again, he gives the strict instruction not to tell. And I really liked verse 36 that said, don't be afraid, only believe. I think I did a little flyer-like thing about that. Okay, hopefully my laptop doesn't die. Anything else you want to add about that?
No, I was just surprised that when Jesus asked them why all this commotion and wailing, the child is not dead but asleep, that they all laughed at him.
Well, because they knew she was dead.
Yeah, but that meant they didn't either they didn't believe that they didn't have faith.
Well,
They weren't the mustard seed. They didn't have any faith. Like the woman who touched his cloak on his way over there.
but if that father was a synagogue leader, probably, the family would have been on the Pharisee side more than on the believing Jesus side.
But it made me wonder though too, since he decided to go ahead and raise her from the dead, if this leader was a synagogue leader that truly had faith and Jesus had seen that in him.
Yeah, I think he had to have.
Because it seems like he's not doing anything for anybody unless he knows they have faith, and that's why he keeps saying over and over and over to the disciples, "Ye of little faith."
Right.
Like when they woke him up, when it was storming.
Well, think about how desperate the synagogue leader had to be willing to go against his beliefs and what he practices and whatever, to even go to Jesus and ask him. So he had to have had some kind of faith, right?
Right. Because if he had been following the Pharisees, and if he had truly been like with them along the way of questioning this and questioning that, then he had to have, when this was happening, he had to have sat down and thought about his faith and maybe prayed and and just was like, I've seen him do this and this and this and this, and so had to have some faith that he could do this, or he would have never approached him.
Right. Okay, so chapter 6, we go into that he cannot preach in his own hometown because, people know him as the boy he grew up to be, and they really don't have faith. So, really, not many miracles were performed there because they just didn't believe.
Mm-hmm.
And then in verse 8, he gives the disciples directions on how to go out. They're to take nothing for the journey except a staff, no bread, no bag, no money in your belts or sandals, but not an extra shirt. Whenever you enter a house, stay there until you leave that town, and if any place will not welcome you or listen to you, leave that place and shake the dust from your feet as a testimony against them. That had to have been hard. I mean, I would think, if I was there then, that I would have faith in whatever he said, right? Because of all the miracles that they saw and witnessed. But he's always telling them that they don't. Why do you have no faith? Where is your faith? Ye of little faith. And yet he's telling them to go do this and go out there in the world with nothing and preach the word. I can't even imagine. They had to have been scared, right?
Yeah. Well, if I remember in the book of in the book of Matthew, didn't they come back and say, but how, or something like that?
Well, they came.
That's when he talked about the mustard seed again, maybe. I can't remember, but I remember them asking how.
Yeah. And yet they'd witnessed him feed thousands and thousands and thousands of people with basically no food.
They haven't seen that yet.
They haven't?
No.
I saw it in Mark. Yeah, in Matthew.
It's coming up in chapter 6. Yeah, they saw it in Matthew, but in Mark, they haven't seen it yet. It's coming up in the same chapter, though.
And I think that it's interesting that Herod, what's his name?
Herod is how I always say
Herod,
it.
yeah.
I don't know.
Okay. So when he heard about all that Jesus was doing, the first thing he thought was that John the Baptist had been raised from the dead. Now that there's a guilty conscience.
Yes, it is. And I like how they explained this so much more than they did in Matthew.
But I think that we're going to see that all the guys probably explain things a little differently.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure everybody's different. So,
Right. And this was, not a person who witnessed it. It's a person
right. The person who
who heard
heard the
about
stories over and over.
it. Yeah.
And I'm sure that while he was traveling along, you said with Peter, right? Or
Yeah.
with Simon, that he heard from the other disciples as well, because I'm sure they met up at different times.
Yeah. Let's see. So, yeah, then he feeds the 5,000 men with 5 loaves and 2 fish and has 12 baskets full left over. And then he walks on water. And then in my version, it said, all who touch his clothes are healed. And I felt like, it must have been hard for him. I mean, he's sent here on a mission. He knows what his goal is. He knows what he needs to do. But I felt like, and I felt it more here in Mark than I did in Matthew, that it must have been like a mob after him, because everybody, if you got 4,000 or 5,000 people, and they're talking men, they're not talking about the women and children in the crowd.
Right.
If all these people are trying to just touch his garment or, get to him, it must have been like a mob of people coming after him all the time.
Every time he turned around, there was a crowd, according to
Yeah.
this. So
Yeah.
when he tried to go somewhere to be alone, it's like he'd turn around and there's a crowd.
Yeah. Until he finally goes out in a boat just to get away, so he has a little bit of space around him.
I think for me, what I thought of that made me think of what it was probably like, but I mean, but I didn't want to think this way, but it's what came to mind because it makes you think of somebody that people looked at like an idol.
Right.
But no, I'm not gonna the Beatles. Every time, the Beatles went somewhere, there were but it was mobs of young women, but still every time they turned around, and how many times do you hear of people who become famous who they're like, I want to be famous, but then then they go out and they can't go out and do anything because there's
Right.
people taking pictures. I mean, Lady Diana.
They don't even have to go out, and people are taking pictures of them in their houses now.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lady Diana, that was just sad.
And they're young kids, they can't do stuff with their children or whatever because people are there wanting to take pictures and take pictures of their kids.
Yeah. Then I wrote down, and I didn't write the verse, the idea of punishment for those who know and don't do versus the punishment for evildoers who don't know. Because it's saying if we know what Jesus expects from us and we don't do it, that our punishment will be worse than for those who never heard of him and do bad. Is that what you got out of it?
Are you I'm not which verse are you on?
I don't know, but I'm before verse 7.
Before chapter 7?
No, I'm on chapter 6. Verse is before 7.
Okay, because we just talked about walking on water. That was verse 65.
Oh,
45.
maybe I'm out of order. Oh, yeah, I am on chapter 7. I'm sorry.
Okay.
No, I'm not. It could have been just a note that I wrote at the bottom.
Okay.
It could not be in order, but it is still on chapter 6.
A prophet without honor. Jesus left there and went to, no, that's when he went to his hometown. So I don't know what I thought because I don't remember that part.
And that's the thing that I say, that not all of us are going to get the same out of it each time we read it, or,
I didn't know if it was the beginning of 7, which mine puts little headings above places, and the beginning of chapter 7 says that which defiles.
I started chapter 7 by saying, I don't know how Jesus didn't get frustrated with the constant challenging by the Pharisees.
I don't know how he didn't either, probably because he just repeated what his father taught him and what his father was telling him in his ear.
I mean, I was getting frustrated for him when I started reading chapter 7, because here we go again, let's challenge him. Let's question him. Let's.
Yeah, but you have to remember, like you said earlier, when I watched you from last week, what you said last week when he was up on the cross, it's the only time that his father turned his head. So during all of this, his father was with him through all of this.
Right.
So if he didn't have an answer, his father did, and his father was always there with him. So to me, I can just imagine his father's talking in his ear, that if he doesn't know exactly what to say, he may be helping him out. So
And he
maybe
could
not,
be giving him
but
that
he
peace
knows
that
what
we
to
don't
say because
understand, right?
he's been taught it his whole entire life. So
Yeah.
oh, Tina was saying, I didn't see it when we were talking about those famous people. She said paparazzi as well as fans.
Yeah.
So even those who, truly love Jesus were there on top of him too.
Yeah. And then we talk about the eating things that is unclean, or I think in this chapter they didn't wash their hands before they ate or something.
Well,
And
sorry, go ahead.
and Jesus says, listen to me, everyone, and understand this. Nothing outside a person can defile them by going into them. Rather, it is what comes out of a person that defiles them. Because what comes out of us comes from our heart. What goes into us just goes to our stomach and leaves. Okay, so I had to call someone about this because.
About the woman?
No, go ahead, because I didn't write about the woman. Oh,
Do
yeah,
you?
the dogs?
Yes.
Yes, I did. So I initially wrote, I don't understand the whole section about taking bread from children to feed the dogs. She argues with him, and he says her faith is great.
Yeah, I have on my notes because most of my journaling is rewriting what I'm reading, but then I have notes and it says, why did her reply show her faith? And then I said, was it because the children do eat and the dogs just get crumbs?
So like I said, I tried looking in my commentary. I couldn't find anything that alluded to what this meant. So I called someone. And what I was told is that in this time, the dogs referred to was the, parable or whatever of the woman. Right? Wait, let me look at my phone because I feel like I'm saying something wrong.
Okay.
Okay. So here we have to bring ourselves back to their time and ways to understand what is happening. The children represent the Jewish people and the little dogs as the Gentiles. And it does refer to her as someone, I forget how it referred to her, but she's obviously not a Jew. She's like on the outskirts, or what does your Bible say?
The woman was Greek, born in Syrian I can't pronounce that. Phoenicia. She begged Jesus to drive the demon out of her daughter.
Yeah, so she was Greek.
Mm-hmm.
So the children represent the Jewish people, and the little dogs refer to the Gentiles, which she would have been, right?
I
The
don't know
woman
what a
was a
Gentile is,
Gentile,
honestly.
and
I'm sorry.
Jesus was reminding her the Jews get priority over the Gentiles because the gospel goes out to the Jew first. She
Okay.
responded either faith, because she knows that even though she is not the Jew, she still needs saving. She became humble, full of faith, respectful, and relying on the mercy of God.
Yeah, I didn't see her as talking back at all by her reply. I just didn't understand why the reply was showed faith.
Well, I felt like she kind of argued because he said that, the children should eat. You can't take food from the children to feed the dogs. And she said, but, basically, but the dogs need to eat too. And they'll eat the crumbs off the floor even.
Right. I just took it as she meant that the kids eat, but the dogs just get the crumbs.
Mm.
So I didn't take it as her talking back to him. I took it as her explaining to him the children eat, but the dogs only get the crumbs left by the children.
Yeah. I think that it was so shocking to me because no one really has responded to the things he says. Right? He speaks and the people listen.
Mm-hmm.
You might go talk about him behind his back or plot against him or whatever, but they don't come back at him, is what I was getting at.
Mm-hmm.
Not so much as she was arguing, but just because she had a response is what I think shocked me.
So is a Gentile a non-Jew?
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome. And then again, at the end of the chapter, we see that he's healing people and still telling them not to go out and tell. And of course, they all do. I mean, how could you not, right? I mean, you're so excited for the healing or whatever.
Yeah, that would be hard not to tell people.
Yeah. Okay, anything else you want to add on that?
No.
Chapter 8. So here he feeds the 4,000 and has food left over. And then the Pharisees want to ask him for a sign. And he says, why does this generation ask for a sign? Truly, I tell you, no sign will be given. Wow, I was scribbling this day. Oh, so Jesus didn't, this is what it said. He didn't come here to heal for the glory, right? He came here to heal, to help the helpless, right?
Mm-hmm.
He always used his powers to minister to the needs of the people. Always, not for any other thing. So why would he go to the Pharisees, and basically what they were asking him for was to put on a show for them? Yes, no.
No, but oh, there they are questioning him. I'm like, I couldn't find where they were questioning him. I see where he was talking to the disciples, but okay. I liked his response. It says, "Why does the generation ask for a sign?
Right.
Does this generation ask for a sign? Truly, I tell you, no sign will be given to it."
And still people want signs.
Well, I know. I've asked for a sign personally. When I was younger.
And
Your
then he
eyes
said,
truly open when you see that there are a ton of signs in front of them.
right. In verse 15, he says, be careful, watch out for the yeast of the Pharisees and Herod. And then, of course, I alluded to this, I think, in Matthew when they talked about the yeast or the leaven, that it means, basically be cautious of evil, because the yeast meant evil or sin in those days. And then I wrote, do you ever get tired of hearing that? And then I wrote,
No, because I
have
love
you
you.
noticed that each time Jesus heals someone, he does it in a different way? So for this blind man and the guy that he, gave hearing to, he spit on his eyes, or he spit on his.
He put fingers in the ears for the one who couldn't hear, and then he spit on his tongue.
Oh, but in another one, he spit on the eyes.
Uh huh.
And yet, before, mainly he's put his hands on it, or he's just spoken a few words to people and they've been healed.
And
So this
also,
is new.
it seems like when he started doing that in different ways, he was moving the people out of sight of the crowd and healing them, and not doing it in front of the people who were watching.
Yeah.
Because I noticed that on the one that I was talking about, who was deaf and couldn't speak, he
Mm-hmm.
took him where nobody could watch him, and he put his fingers in his ears and then spit on his tongue. And then again, he did it here, and he's been doing it more and more and telling them, don't tell anyone, you know.
But
So,
then people hear him speak, a man speaking who's never spoken.
right. But I think that's what he wants. He wants them to hear that. Like the one that he told to go home and tell everybody who wanted to go with Jesus. And he said, go and tell them, of the good things that I have done. Well, they knew that he had been bound and he had been all of that. And the demons were, and that something good had to have happened. But since they didn't see it, they didn't know Jesus was with him, they wouldn't know. So he gave him permission because his people didn't know.
Right.
But these people, if they see that he's, the one who couldn't hear or talk is all of a sudden hearing them and talking, well, they knew he was with Jesus. Jesus must have healed him.
Yeah.
Why should they have to go and tell them that that's what happened?
That's true.
I
And
liked
then,
how he chastised his disciples.
hmm,
That's what I couldn't get over. When you're talking about the yeast of the bread, and that is, I have exclamation points where he chastised the disciples again.
yeah,
They're talking about not having bread, and it's like, did you not just see me feed even more people?
yeah,
Because all they had was one loaf of bread.
yeah.
He's like, did
And
you
then
not
again, like we saw in
still
Matthew,
not
he asks
understand?
everybody who do people say he is, and who do they say he is?
Hmm. And everybody else thinks he's Elijah
Yeah.
or John the Baptist risen from the dead, and they say he's the Messiah.
And again, and I'm sure I brought this up last time because it just floors me when he's talking about his impending death and he has to rebuke Satan by talking to Peter. Because Peter wants to say, oh, that's not going to happen. Oh, no. And, try to stand up and defend him. You're not going to die, whatever. And what does Jesus say? Get behind me, Satan. That's in verse 33 in my Bible.
Hmm.
And I don't know if it sticks out for me because there's a song that I really love about that talks about this. And so, like, when I'm feeling really tempted or really bombarded, and I know that Satan is like trying to bring me down or do whatever, then I always go to that song and sing it because it says basically, get behind me, Satan, or get under my feet or whatever. But and then what does he say? You do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns.
Because as mere humans, they can't understand what he's saying, that they would actually do that, and
And
that all this
the
is going to
Holy,
happen.
yeah, they have Jesus teaching them, but that's not, I don't think that's not the same as having the Holy Spirit in us where we
Right.
can, you know,
And having faith.
right.
Although they have to have some kind of faith, because when he said, come up and follow me, they did. They
Yeah,
left
they
everything,
didn't, not one of them hesitated either. They just did it.
But then again, it was the will of God. When I was listening to you last week and you were talking about, oh, which one is it that gives, I know his name, that gives Jesus up to the Pharisees?
Judas,
Judas, yeah. When you were talking about Judas, and why does he do this and stuff? Well, it's the will of God. He had no will. It was the will of God
yeah.
that was going to happen. And if it wouldn't have been Judas, it would have been one of the other disciples. But it was already written what was going to happen. So, Jesus knew he was going to betray him, and he knew what was going to happen.
Okay, well, everybody's home here, so it's going to get loud, I think.
Did you get my message? I tried to call you so you could listen.
I turned my phone off so that I
Come on,
could
go, please. Nana's
comment
doing
on it.
something.
Okay, so the last thing that I have here is he says in verse 38, if anyone is ashamed of me and my words, something this, adulterous and sinful generation, the Son of Man will be ashamed of them when he comes in his Father's glory with the holy angels. I like that too.
Mm-hmm.
Have you been working on your blanket?
I started it.
I did. I'm doing my
Got
second
2 strips done.
skein of let's see, my second skein of my wool. My second hang. It looks very similar to the first one.
I have 2 or 3 strips of my first square, so I've got to get to working on it more. I have like 5 things I'm trying to get done.
Well, you have all year, you know.
I know.
But I'm trying to make mine like a queen size instead of a throw, so I've got a lot to do.
Well, one of my goals was to start working on Christmas in January. So I literally started it the very last day so that Bob couldn't get upset with me and say that I did not start working on Christmas in January.
Well,
But
there you go.
he changed it and said all of my Christmas gifts were to be done by the end of January. I said, that's
Oh,
not
yeah.
what I said.
No.
I
That
said, there's
wouldn't
some
happen.
gifts that I don't even know.
Yeah.
Well, not exactly what you said.
All right, so let's go to our devotional. Can you even see that, or is the light too bright? There you go.
Or no, he thought I was going to start, I think, all of my gifts, but I don't know what they're all going to be yet.
Yeah, you got to think about it. You just gave gifts. Okay, so it says the growing kingdom of God. Nothing starts out full grown. People, organizations, ministries, relationships, each thing has a starting point from which it grows. God's kingdom on earth started small as a mustard seed, but has grown fantastically and is continuing to grow. You have a part in making that growth happen. It's pretty cool to be a part of something so amazing. So at times when you feel alone, remember that you're a part of a big kingdom. It's a family. The verse is, what is the kingdom of God like? What shall I compare it to? It is like a mustard seed which a man took and planted in his garden. It grew and became a tree, and birds perched in its branches. Luke 13:18 through 19. And then there's a little prayer, so we'll do that in conclusion. Dear Father, I'm so blessed to be a part of your family, to feel that I belong to something so amazing and so real. God, I want to tell others about your kingdom. Show me how to do that and give me the courage to share. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Well, thank you for joining me. Then I didn't have to do all the talking.
Well, I thought it was easier because you kept getting everything that I was writing like later and like you'd move on to something else. I just thought it would be easier.
Yeah,
Although, like, I do not know much about the Bible yet, so I'm learning
we're learning.
and I'm enjoying it.
And I think every time you read it, you'll learn something new.
Yep. And when I have questions, I can ask Bob because he has, he went to church when he was younger and had Bible school and stuff, things that I didn't get to do. So,
Cool. All right. Good night.
good night.
I will talk to you next week.
Okay.
Have a wonderful week. May God bless you all today and every day. And I'll see you next week.
Night, everybody.
Bye.